Good morning. I'm Denise Smilett, Chair of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. I would ask everyone at this time to please silence your cell phones and all electronic devices. Also, while masks are no longer mandatory, please feel free to wear one if you believe it is required or necessary for your own well-being. With 5 board members present and Commissioners Dermody and Hickernell present by telephone, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. Commissioner Dermody, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Commissioner Hickernell, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, excellent. Also, I would note for the record that in addition to the 7 board members participating today, we have our ex officio members. George Augusto, representing Russell Redding, Secretary for the Department of Agriculture, is joining us by telephone as well. George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, we also have Adria Zimmerman, representing Pat Brown, Secretary for the Department of Revenue, and Jennifer Langen, representing Stacy Garrity, State Treasurer. Thank you, ex officios, for joining us. I'd like to now ask everyone to please rise and join me in a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, April 23rd, to discuss personnel matters pending litigation and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters coming before the board. We will now hear from Holdings Acquisition Company, LP, doing business as Rivers Casino Pittsburgh, and the Office of Enforcement Counsel regarding Rivers' petition to reconfigure gaming offerings and revise the gaming floor. I would note for the record that Rivers' counsel, John Donnelly, is participating remotely pursuant to a request he made in advance to the board's Office of Chief Counsel, which was approved. His client's representatives, however, are all present in the hearing room. With that being said, I would ask that if there are any non-attorneys who will be presenting evidence today in this proceeding, that you please stand to be sworn in by the court reporter at this time. Thank you. I would also ask that everyone who's going to speak to please state and spell your name for the court reporter prior to your speaking. Mr. Donnelly, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. With that confirmation, I'm going to ask Rivers to begin.
Thank you. John Donnelly, D-O-N-N-E-L-L-Y, on behalf of Rivers Pittsburgh, that has the unfortunate corporate name of Holdings Acquisition Co. We're here today to follow up on a petition that was filed in February and has been subject to a great deal of effort on the part of the FIU, on the Office of Enforcement Counsel and others, to review what we put in the petition and the responses that we gave to those inquiries. What we're looking for today is permission from the board to remove 302 machines from the gaming floor, which will leave us with approximately 2,000, actually 1,981 slot machines on the floor. The purposes of these, obviously, are to enhance our revenues. We are kind of in a shared venture with the Commonwealth with regard to slot machines because of the tax rate, which we all know is in excess of 50%. We make money, and when we make money, the Commonwealth makes money. So we don't take this lightly. The purpose of this request and our plan is to keep up with competition that has increased and continues to increase from a number of areas, including skilled slots, which we'll address a little bit later on, the addition of a new competitor in our backyard in the form of, and an aggressive and good competitor in the form of live casino, the proliferation of the aforementioned skilled slot machines, more competition in Ohio and West Virginia, and also sports betting and internet betting, all things that didn't exist in when the initial statute was passed and when table games came into place. And I have with me today Andre Barberi, who is our assistant manager, and I'm sure to wreck Derek's name, Derek Peloso, who is the manager of slots, who are both sitting at the table and will address the PowerPoint. And with that, I'll turn the PowerPoint and the presentation over to Andre. But with one thank you, I appreciate allowing me to participate remotely. It's a great accommodation, and thank you for that. Andre?
Thank you. Andre Barnaby, AndreBarnabei. Good morning, Chairperson Smiler, members of the Commission, and members of the Gaming Control Board. And we want to thank you guys for allowing us to be here today to present our petition for a gaming floor reconfiguration, and for working with us over the past few months to get into the analytics behind the information that we provided and the good back and forth that we had to get here today. My name is Andre Barnaby. I'm the Assistant General Manager at Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh. I've been with the company now for more than 16 years, and I've been in the gaming business for over 25 years in a variety of roles, both in the state of Pennsylvania and the state of West Virginia. In my role currently and in previous roles, my job is to make sure that we increase revenues and run an efficient business. And those are some of the things that we want to talk about today. We also have the ability and the need to address our customer demands and what they are looking for in our market to make sure that they come back to us as a casino of choice. With that, I'd like to take us through where we are today and what we're looking to do. We're looking to reconfigure our gaming space, which currently consists of 2,283 slot machines, by removing 302 units. Noted in the chart there at the top, the number of slots, the reduction, leaving us with a total of 1,981 units. Our proposed reconfiguration will allow us to create a better gaming environment for our players by introducing things such as wider pathways, less middle seats, and a more comfortable banking configuration, things like more carousel banks. A reduction is necessary to achieve that, due in part to the size of the new slot machines, which Derek will show you here shortly. We also had some recent additions and changes to our facility. We added a new Starbucks right near our main entrance from our parking garage, and we also added a metal detection system, which takes up more real estate as you come in the building. We have a service bar in that area as well, and that is an area that we will reconfigure if we are granted permission for this petition. As you will see here in the near future, our current supply of slot units is significantly higher than what our guest demand is for those units. This proposal will not impact the counts for table games, ETGs, or poker tables as indicated in the chart above. Again, our goal is to maximize our slot revenue by offering the best available player experience. With me today, I have Derek Peluso, who is our current Director of Slots. Derek actually started with the property in 2012 as an intern with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Derek for the next few slides.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Derek Peluso, DEREK, As Andre stated, I'm going to walk us through the next handful of slides that aim to support our petition. As you'll see on this slide in front of us, there are two slot machines pictured. The slot machine on the left is one that has been on our floor since we opened nearly 15 years ago. Since we've opened, the gaming industry has changed quite a bit. Some of those changes include that slot machine sizes continue to get bigger and bigger. The most recent example of this is the slot machine pictured on the right. This slot machine is the Horizon cabinet that is manufactured by Light & Wonder. We're actually installing this cabinet on our floor next month. As the picture suggests, and as you can confirm with the dimensions listed on the right, this new slot machine is over twice the size of the older one. Slot machine sizes continue to grow, however, our gaming floor has remained the same size. In order for us to be able to continue to purchase and place the very best slot machine products available, we believe it's necessary to reconfigure our slot floor. Next, I'd like to speak to our current supply and demand. These charts illustrate the highest occupancy percentages that we experienced during a 12-month time period. The 12-month time period that was used was from November 2022 to October 2023. And this date frame was used because at the time that we were putting this data together, it was the most recent data available to us. So during this 12-month period, our very highest occupancy for a 1-hour period was 65%. Said differently, on our very busiest day in a 12-month period, 35% of our slot machines were not being played. That equates to about 800 slot machines not being played on our very busiest hour during a 12-month period. This data certainly suggests that we have an oversupply of slot machines to meet the current demand. This next table takes an even deeper look at our supply and demand. It shows the average occupancy per hour per day of the week during that same 12-month time period. As many of you would likely guess, our busiest hours during the week are Friday, Saturday nights from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. As you can see on this chart, at our very busiest hours of the week, only 40% of our slot machines are being occupied on average. Said differently, about 60% of our slot machines are not being occupied. To summarize our slot occupancy and the current demand, this last chart on the subject again looks at the average occupancy per hour for each day of the week. During this 12-month period, we never averaged 45% or higher occupancy at any point during the week, including our very busiest weekend hours. Before handing it back to Andre, I'd like to go over a few more reasons that we believe justify our reconfiguration proposal. We consider our slot floor to be pretty old. If you look at the chart in front of us, you can see that we have over 500 slot machines that have been on our floor since we opened and are now 14 plus years old. With this reconfiguration, we plan on removing the lowest performing and oldest units. In fact, the average age of the units that we plan on removing is over 11 years old. Now, why do we want to get rid of the old stuff? That's because our analysis tells us that the newer machines outperform the older ones by 55%. In addition to the performance, it's also costly to keep the older machines up and running. Each year, as parts become more scarce, they become more expensive. Despite these rising costs, Rivers has continued to reinvest in our slot floor. In fact, last year in 2023, Rivers spent $2.9 million on new slot machine product. Now I'd like to hand it back to Andre to continue our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. So as I mentioned, our roles and our responsibility are to increase revenues, not only for Rivers Casino, but for the state of Pennsylvania, and to do so responsibly and to manage our business. I'd like to review some of the history that we've had, some of the changes that have occurred to our competitive landscape, and some of our changes to our past slot counts and our financial results over that same time period. This data is data that was used via the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's websites from the 2013/14 fiscal year through the 2022/2023 fiscal year, and again is posted via the PGCB's website data. So what we see here on the top of the chart would be our years running for the fiscal years, our counts. Those counts are represented as an average of each of the 12 months over that period of time. So in the fiscal year 2013 and 14, we had an average of 2,962 slots. Fast forwarding to the fiscal year 2022-2023, we had 2,385 slots. And then our gross terminal revenue is listed for each of those respective years. And then what we felt maybe some significant changes in competitive landscape that has occurred also during some of those years. And so as we come across, one of the first things that changed was the introduction of fantasy contests online. And that occurred in the 2017-2018 timeframe. Sports wagering was legalized and launched, and I believe we were one of the first ones, if not the first, in the state of Pennsylvania to launch a land-based. And that was in the 2018-19 year. And we really had a great year from a financial perspective for that, because we did receive a lot of positive publicity and coverage for a good length of time. In 2019 and 2020, there was a lot of different things that happened, one of which was Live Casino opening in our backyard. So a brand new competitor, a good competitor in a good market, in some of the shared market, overlapping market. Also, iGaming and video truck stops, VGTs, were also introduced at that time. And then, of course, the pandemic. So we had a lot of factors that occurred in that time frame. And then impacting also the 2020 and 2021 year would have been the pandemic as well as the launch of iGaming in West Virginia. And why that's relevant is just simply due to the geography of our casino, able to be from the Pittsburgh casino into the state of West Virginia in about 30 minutes. Number of employees that we have actually work in West Virginia, and a good amount of visitors visit both from PA and West Virginia due to the proximity. And then in 2022, 2023 would have been the launch of sports betting in the state of Ohio. So I wanted to note that. I also wanted to note, if you look at our gross terminal revenue over those respective years, regardless of the change and reduction in count of slot machines, we're not seeing an impact that correlates to the number of slots that changed or reduced in terms of that versus our GTR. If you took out the COVID years and the recovery thereafter, there's, I think, 600 games, give or take, from 2013-14 through 2022-2023, with relatively stable GTR through those years. So I note that because those aren't the only factors that are out there. There are other things in addition, like guest preferences that have changed over time, the size of the machines, as Derek has indicated, the bet structures, right? What is the entry-level bet today on a machine versus what it was 10 or 12 or 15 years ago? Video slot machines, which are more popular today versus real machines that were the majority of our games when we first opened. So there's been a lot of changes in the market, both from a competitive landscape and also what we're able to offer as a casino of choice, right? A lot more new versus a lot more old. So I also wanted to touch base on what we consider our end-of-life slot machines. So for a slot machine to be considered end-of-life, we actually get a notice from the manufacturer. And that manufacturer tells us that we are no longer going to support that slot machine. So that means there's no more software being developed, so no new games, no new options to put on that game. And the parts, when they run out of the parts inventory, you kind of need to find them on your own, which creates a quite challenging environment for us, especially given the fact that we have games that have been on our floor since the day we opened, some of which were used when we first opened the facility. So what does that look like for Pittsburgh? Right now, we have about 45% of our games that are considered end of life. And yes, 45% is a fair amount, but I can tell you that we've done a very good job in getting to 45%. When I first took over slots about 8 years ago, I think we were in the 60% range. And we made a concerted effort to try to adjust and improve that number as we noted that the newer games were outperforming the older games. If our reduction proposal is approved, we will see that number go down into the 36% range. So 36% of our games would be end of life. We have a way to continue to cut through that as we plan to invest over $2 million this year, again, in new slot machines. So we should greatly improve into the low 30-ish% range. Now, we don't anticipate ever getting to zero. It would be nice if we did. but I don't think that that's realistic for us. And frankly, there is still some demand for a little bit of the older games that exist out there. But what that does is that allows us to take some of those older games, as Derek mentioned, off the floor by choosing the lowest performers from a software perspective, and then literally taking those machines apart to allow those parts to help other machines survive for the next few years to come. And so that's how we've kind of been able to do that through the years and maintain those games that we don't have the ability to get new parts for. So what we know is that the number of units does not determine or drive the revenues. It's the guest choice, the guest preference, and what they choose to play. You know, we didn't have a crystal ball when we opened that said, you should put this many machines in today, and these are the types of machines, and it will sustain itself for the rest of your business, right? We chose at that time to do what the business supported, and we're choosing today to try to adjust and adapt our business according to the current business demands, as well as the competitive landscape change and all the other factors that we mentioned about end-of-life games and the size of new games. I kind of was this morning kind of toying in my head a way to kind of put it, and I thought, you know, our slot machine floor is kind of similar to a car lot, right? You could have a car lot that runs on for blocks and blocks and blocks, but if you don't have the right cars on the lot, you're not going to sell anything. And if we think about cars today, most of the things that are selling are SUVs and trucks, much bigger than the cars of the past, taking up more space on the car lot, right? And the older cars, they're really hard to maintain. They're hard to find parts for, and they're hard to find people to work on them. So our business, our market in Pittsburgh, we have customers that are shopping for the new, the glitz, the glamour, everything with the bells and whistles, and they want the size and everything to go with it. And that's what we're here to try to provide to them, to increase our revenues and to increase the revenues for the state, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Andre. Well, we added 3 slides in this presentation that we pulled from a address that Tim Dreckhoff, the Chief Operating Officer of Rush Street Gaming, presented just last week at the East Coast Gaming Conference, and I know many of the board members were there. I want to emphasize that these charts represent statistics that are available and created by the Illinois Gaming Board and the Virginia Lottery Board. So they aren't numbers that we created or made up. And the purpose of them is to demonstrate what we are anticipating and have seen is the effect of skilled slot machines on the demand in bricks and mortar casinos. I am a big advocate of bricks and mortar casinos. They create capital, create jobs, they improve neighborhoods. A prime example is Sugar House in moving into the Fishtown area that completely changed that neighborhood. And they provide a place where people can get together and socialize, and where the rich can rub elbows with the poor, and a guy, take even a Derek, who can start out as an intern, can become a big shot in the casino industry. I don't feel, not only feel, I know that skilled slot machines do none of that. And let's be crystal clear. Those so-called skilled slot machines are slot machines. They are defined in the act that we're under right now, the Gaming Act in Pennsylvania, in Section 1103, dead on as a slot machine, which should be regulated by this board, but as you know, are not. Moreover, it's just common sense. It walks, quacks, waddles like a duck, and they're ducks. If any of you, and I'm sure you have played them, the skill element is sometimes as goofy as a tic-tac-toe screen where a person puts the 0 at the right spot. They have cut in dramatically into the revenues at the casinos in Pennsylvania. We don't have any good statistics in Pennsylvania because we don't know how many machines there are. There was an amicus brief filed by, I believe, all of the casinos recently before the Supreme Court, asking the court to take up the recent Commonwealth Court decision that permitted skilled slots. And the estimates in there are that there's currently 67,000 of these machines operating, and I call them rogue machines because that's what they are, operating in Pennsylvania. They're unregulated, they're untaxed, they have no controls over underage kids playing them. And again, I invite someone to go down and have a cup of coffee in one of the facilities that has these and watch kids come in, because that's what you'll see. They have no controls over self-excluded persons. The hold percentage is horrible. Almost 25% hold percentage versus 8% max in Pennsylvania. There are no customer protections. They are very hard to, if not impossible, to regulate. I invite anybody to take a look at what happened in Louisiana and with slot machine truck routes, the routes that people would collect from machines. They're very, very difficult to regulate and very costly to regulate. That's hurting us a lot. And when Mr. Jekyll presented at the East Coast Gaming Congress the other day, he pulled some statistics from Virginia, and that's, as you know, Rush Street also has oversight over a casino in Virginia and one in Illinois. We'll look at Illinois first. With Illinois, when you went into slot machines in competition that were not, it dropped revenues precipitously from 2012 to 2019, down 35%. Virginia is kind of a more interesting. You can go to Virginia, kind of more interesting because Virginia had a experiment where skilled games were permitted for a year, I believe, and then they were removed as a ban on them was promoted. And you can see what happened with revenues. When the ban came in November of 2023, revenues, which had been going down, immediately popped up and rose and rose and rose. So don't take our word for it. Don't take all of our intuitive knowledge and common sense. But the statistics are right in front of us. I recognize there's two things going on. The legislature is considering a bill right now, and of course the court is considering it. I'm very hopeful that the court will take this matter up. I'm hopeful that it will read the Gaming Act and implement the will of the legislature at the time that it passed the Gaming Act and the two major amendments to it, where it never tinkered with the definition of a slot machine. And I hope that the court will take this and reverse the Commonwealth. If not, I understand that there's a bill pending. I hope that the legislature sees the wisdom of not passing that bill. It will be devastating to the bricks and mortar facilities. And the bricks and mortar facilities are much more valuable to the Commonwealth, just taking the real estate taxes alone and forgetting about the human factors than are the skilled slot machines. So with that, I'll turn it back to Andre.
At this time, we would like to thank everybody for their time and attention, and we would appreciate you guys considering our petition for our slot floor reconfiguration. Thank you.
Enforcement Counsel, do you have any questions for Rivers?
We do. David Tepper, Tepper, on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Going to slide 3. You note that you have 55 ETGs. Are these considered table games? And if so, are they banking, non-banked, or hybrid table games?
Yeah. So the 55 ETGs are hybrid table games. Those are actually considered table games on our state reporting, and the ratio is for each for every 5 units we have, it is considered one non-banking table, and that's how it's reported on the state website as well.
Thank you. Do you anticipate the number of slot machines dipping below 1,981 machines at any time during the reconfiguration?
No, we do not anticipate that. We have not finalized our schedule. There's a lot of factors that we have to work through as, scheduling construction workers, electricians, slot machine vendors, but we do not anticipate going below that 1981 number during the process.
Staying on that, if the petition is granted by the board, when approximately does Rivers intend to begin the process of the reconfiguration slot reduction, and when does Rivers anticipate its completion?
Again, our schedule hasn't been finalized yet. However, we're hoping to have it started in early June and finish before the end of July.
Thank you. If this petition is granted by the board, would there be any reduction in the number of employees at Rivers associated with this project?
There would be no reductions in the headcount of our employees as a result of this project.
And at this stage, do you know what the impact would be on the square footage of the smoking and non-smoking areas of the slot machine area?
There would be no impact on the square footage for either smoking or non-smoking.
And do you know what impact would be on the number of available slot machines in the smoking area versus the non-smoking area of the gaming floor?
There would be an impact to both smoking and non-smoking. We're looking to reduce our count by 302 units, so we're going to be taking units off in both areas. However, our goal is to meet our current demand. So if a patron comes into our casino, whether they're a smoker or a non-smoker, we believe we're going to have the game that they want to play when they come visit us.
And turning to slide 10. Other than the $2 million that Rivers plans to invest in 2024, what plans does Rivers have to address the remaining end-of-life slot machines that will be left on the gaming floor?
Yeah. So we continue to try to improve that. As I mentioned earlier, we went from the 60% range down to the 40% range, and we're striving to get into the 30% range. We will continue to reinvest in the property as we have done in previous years, and we will continue to do our best to decrease that number as much as possible. Again, I don't think we'll ever get to zero, but we are in a much better place today, and hopefully in a much better place here if this petition is approved.
And just to confirm, the $2 million that Rivers intends to invest in their slot product in 2024 on slide 10 is in addition to the $2.9 million that Rivers invested in 2023 on their slot product on slide 8.
That is correct. That is slot product that we anticipate hitting our floor before the end of the 2024 year.
Thank you. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no further questions.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioners Dermody and Hickernell, do you have any questions for Rivers?
No questions.
None, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Chair, I have one question.
Yes,
So
Dylan.
with your reconfiguration, how many new machines are you planning to bring into that right at the start? Are you just taking away 302, or are you just bringing in 100?
Yes. So 302 that we take off will be over 11 years old.
Okay.
We will bring in an additional $2 million worth of games before the end of the calendar year. Can't give you an exact number on that just because each machine has a different price. And it depends on, we will actually order based on what our customer demand and the recent trends have been. Meaning we will look at the time of decision and say, all right, is cabinet A or cabinet B performing better? all right, we want more cabinet A. Cabinet A may cost 20,000, cabinet B may cost 30. So we can, we kind of wheel and deal and get the most amount of units for that 2 million. But all of that would be new games. And then when those games come in, there'll be an additional 1-to-1 removal and replacement with new games.
Yeah, that was the question I had.
So it's removing 302 old and then reinvesting the 2 million to replace additional old units.
Okay. And then you should replace, get rid of the older, keep
Yeah.
just, all right.
Yep, and we'll
Thank
keep
you.
for parts.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none. Thank you. Office of Enforcement Counsel, do you have a presentation?
The Office of Enforcement Counsel does not have a public presentation. However, we respectfully request that should the board grant Rivers' petition to reconfigure the gaming floor, that the approval be made subject to the conditions outlined in the Office of Enforcement Counsel's answer. The Office of Enforcement Counsel would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Rivers, do you have any questions for Enforcement Counsel? Mr. Donnelly? Do you have any questions for Enforcement Counsel?
No, I did not. No, none.
Any questions or comments for Enforcement Counsel from the board? Commissioners Dermody, Hicknell, any questions for Enforcement Counsel?
No, Madam Chair.
No.
Okay. Rivers, would you like to add anything else at this time?
Not at this time, thank you.
I'd like to just a quick conclusion, like 4 sentences, that this action will not reduce revenues. It will not have any effect on table games. It will not have adverse effect on peak demand. And the motivation is purely to meet competition and to continue to keep up with the Joneses, if not exceed the Joneses. Thank you.
Mr. Donnelly, would you like to move your PowerPoint presentation into evidence?
I do so move that into evidence. Thank you.
Any objection?
Nope.
No objection? Okay, Office of Enforcement Counsel, do you have anything else to add?
We have nothing further to add.
Thank you. That concludes this proceeding. This matter will be put before the board for a vote later this morning during the Office of Chief Counsel's portion of the agenda. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Our first order of business this morning is consideration of the board meeting transcript and minutes from the February 21st, 2024 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the February 21st, 2024 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the minutes and transcript of the February 21st, 2024 meeting.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Motion's adopted. We will now hear from Executive Director Kevin O'Toole. Kevin?
Good morning, Chair Smiler. Good morning, Commissioners. I have the pleasure this morning, on behalf of myself and on behalf of our leadership team and our management team here at the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board, to recognize and express all of our appreciation to the board's administrative professionals as we celebrate today Administrative Professionals Day. We are recognizing 14 employees who contribute in many significant ways to the success of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. 8 of our administrative professionals have 10 to 15 plus years of service, and the others are on their way to that plateau. We sincerely thank the following individuals for their outstanding service and their unwavering commitment to the important work that they perform day after day to ensure the board accomplishes its goals and objectives to fairly and competently regulate the casino industry and all gambling expansion activities. The administrative professionals that I would like to recognize are Kathleen Black, Jacqueline Bruce, Deborah Davis, Sarah Heisey, Alexa Nicely, Sean Kovach, Sarah Marley, Tara Ottenberg, Dina Peach, Cheryl Posofic, Stacy Russell, Linda Schramm, Kelly Spittle, and Angela Yanisek. With that, I conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Kevin. On behalf of the entire board, please allow me to join in your comments regarding all of our administrative professionals whose work, while often being performed behind the scenes, is really the glue that holds this agency together. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Now we will hear from our Director of Budget, David Wren.
Good morning, Chair Smiler and board members. Today we'll provide an update of board expenditures through the end of the third quarter, which is March 31st. Through the end of the third quarter, board expenses totaled $37,584,000, or 72% of the total appropriation of $52,159,000. Total expenses are in line with expectations. Expenditures are up $3.8 million from the same date last fiscal year due to the expansion of the agency complement and general salary and benefit cost increases. 91%, or $34.1 million of the board expenses to date have been for payroll. This includes $20 million for salaries and $13.9 million for benefits. Benefits total 69% of the salary costs. For the year, payroll expenses are up $3.8 million, which is essentially all of the increase for the fiscal year. Operating expenses total $3.5 million. That was up $45,000 from last year. The largest operating expenses are $1.3 million, or 38% of total operating costs for rentals and leases. $1 million for services, which were predominantly IT consultants and interagency billings for services provided by other state agencies to the board, and $688,000 for other operating expenses, which includes fingerprint and database fees related to background investigations. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for Dave? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
We will now hear from our Human Resources Director, Danette Bixler-George. Danette?
Morning, Chair, board members. The Office of Human Resources has one motion today for your consideration relative to the hiring of 3 individuals. The following 3 individuals have completed the background investigation process and drug screening and are ready for presentation to the board. First, we have Dustin Lowy, who has been selected as a sports wagering compliance representative in the Office of Sports Wagering Operations and is recommended for hire by Kevin Kyle, the Director of Sports Wagering Operations. Next, we have Bruce Green, who has been selected as an investigator in the Southeast Regional Office in the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement and is recommended for hire by Paul Morrow, Director of Investigations and Enforcement. And finally, we have Heidi Zula, who has been selected as the Director of Human Resources and is recommended for hire by Claire Yantis, Administrative Director. Unless you have questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion for the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Danette. Next is our Office of Chief Counsel.
Morning.
Good morning.
Our first agenda item today relates to a local law enforcement grant application. Specifically, the Delaware County District Attorney's Office is seeking a local law enforcement grant in the amount of $250,000. If the board were inclined to award this grant, it would be Delaware County's 10th grant under the local law enforcement grant program. The budget submitted with the grant application indicates that the funds requested are primarily going to be used to pay the salaries and benefits of 1 detective and 1 assistant district attorney who serve on the Delaware County Illegal Gaming Task Force. Other proposed uses for the funds include investigative overtime, costs associated with public outreach programs, and the purchase of equipment and vehicle rentals. The proposed project meets all the eligibility criteria set forth by the board in its local law enforcement grant guidelines, and I'd ask for a motion to approve this grant.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the local law enforcement grant application as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next before the board today are 4 petitions. One of those petitions was heard by the board earlier today during a public hearing, and the remaining 3 petitions will be decided on the documentary record by agreement of the parties or because the Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the requested relief. In each of these matters, the board has, in advance of this meeting, been provided with the complete evidentiary record that was filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeals. The first petition before the board is Holding Acquisition Company's request to modify the gaming floor of the Rivers Casino Pittsburgh. The board heard from Holdings Acquisition just a few moments ago during a public hearing. Rivers has a current complement of 2,283 slot machines on its gaming floor, and the current request is to remove 302, or 13.23%, of its current slot machines, which in total will bring the slot machine complement down to 1,981 machines. After review by the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement's Financial Investigations Unit, the Office of Enforcement Counsel does not object to the relief requested, but proposes that the board impose several conditions which Rivers has agreed to and which have been outlined in OEC's answer. There is also a request by Rivers that some of the sensitive information pertaining to this matter that is found in the pleadings and the record be maintained as confidential. OEC largely does not object to this request, but does feel that certain pieces of information in Rivers' petition need not be redacted as it is in the public domain. The Office of Chief Counsel would agree with that, the position of OEC in this matter, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz approves that the board grant Holdings Acquisition Company, LP, doing business as Rivers Casino Pittsburgh's petition for approval to reconfigure gaming offerings and approve a revised gaming floor plan as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. I further move that the petitioner's request for confidentiality as limited by OEC's response be granted in part.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next the next petition before the board is 6406 Trucks Plaza LLC's petition requesting approval of a transfer of a 20% interest in the company to an individual related to the two present owners, as well as a request that the licensing of the new principal be expedited. By way of background, 6406 Truck Plaza LLC operates a truck stop in Emlenton, Pennsylvania, and has held a video gaming terminal license since April of 2019. The company is owned by Edward J. Yasechko and Carol Burns, each holding a 50% interest. The petition seeks approval for both Mr. Yasechko and Ms. Burns to each transfer a 10% interest to William Burns, giving him a 20% interest in the business. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the proposed transfer of ownership, subject to conditions outlined in their answer, including the full licensure of the new owner in the normal course. The Office of Chief Counsel agrees with OEC's position in this matter, and it's now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant 6406 Truck Plaza LLC's petition for change of control as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next petition before the board today is a request for removal from the self-exclusion list. On March 21st, 2013, an individual with the initials FB placed himself on the self-exclusion list and chose the lifetime self-exclusion option. Almost 10 years later, on March 8th, 2023, FB filed a request for removal from the list. Although FB initially failed to include the required problem gambling assessment verification form signed by a certified assessment provider, causing OEC to object, the petitioner subsequently did file the requested form confirming that an assessment was performed and that a problem gambling treatment was not recommended. Consequently, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an amended answer withdrawing its objection, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant FB's petition for removal from the self-exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board is a second petition requesting removal from the self-exclusion list. On November 2nd, 2011, an individual with the initials JB placed himself on the exclusion list, choosing the lifetime self-exclusion option. On January 30th, 2024, JB filed a request for removal from the list. JB included with his petition a problem gambling assessment verification form signed by a certified treatment provider, confirming that an assessment of JB was performed and that problem gambling treatment was not recommended. The Office of Enforcement Counsel answered the petition having no objection, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant JB's petition for removal from the self-exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
The next matter before the board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals and entities: David Krupe, Vadim Jelenzakov, Martin Sandoval, Heather Rollo, Justin Sela, Thomas Mankiewicz, John Pentoff, The Action Network, Patrick Keene, Aaron Borad, Melissa Betts, Lorenza Fertitta Jr., Michael Daly, Peter McCluskey, Manjit Singh, Jeremy Bauskill, Anthony Simons, Andrew Meller, Samuel Swalnell, John Aitken, Becky Harris, Terrence Kalani, Nail Connell, Aaron Chalom Yagepin, Yaviv Sherman, no relation to Doug, Paul Godfrey, Robin Godfrey, Sumish Pathtek, Larry Gauchi, Christina Stover-Young, Kent B. Young Revocable Trust, Jeffrey Tratner, Per Helberg, Adam Noble, Gabriel Locke, and Keith Gardick. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to any of these requests, and therefore, if the board grants same, it would be doing so without prejudice to each of these parties.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board issues orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Next before the board for consideration are 8 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations have been provided to the board in advance of this meeting, along with the complete evidentiary record. Additionally, each of the persons involved or the subject of these reports and recommendations have been advised that their matter was coming up before the board today and that they could come forward and briefly address the board if they so chose. If any of these persons are present and wish to address the board, they should come forward when their matter is called. Wayne Samuels is the first report and recommendation before the board today. In September of 2014, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Wayne Samuels on the board's involuntary exclusion list after it was found that on June 17, 2014, while playing table games at Harrah's, Philadelphia, he was surreptitiously capping bets after the outcome of the game appeared certain. Subsequently, the board issued an order on December 10, 2014, placing Mr. Samuels on the involuntary exclusion list. On September 7, 2022, Mr. Samuels filed a request for removal from the list. OEC filed an answer objecting to the request, and after several continuances, a hearing in this matter was held. However, Mr. Samuels failed to appear, and the hearing was held in his absence. Pursuant to the uncontested findings of fact in the report and recommendation, OEC presented evidence, including facts surrounding the cheating incident that led to Mr. Samuels' placement on the list, as well as evidence of additional incidents that occurred at Parks Casino prior to his placement on the list, and 3 incidents where Mr. Samuels violated the board's order placing him on the list after his exclusion. Consequently, the report and recommendation issued recommends that Mr. Samuels remain on the board's involuntary exclusion list, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Wayne Samuels remain on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Shelton Scott's request for removal from the self-exclusion list and recovery of funds confiscated from him while on the list is the subject of the next report and recommendation. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to this request. By way of background, in August of 2015, OEC filed a petition seeking to place Mr. Scott on the involuntary exclusion list, alleging that he stole a patron's chip and pinched a bet at Rivers Casino Pittsburgh, was verbally abusive to a poker manager at that property, as well as defaced the property. A hearing on the exclusion petition was held, and subsequently the board issued an order on February 10th, 2016, placing Mr. Scott on the involuntary exclusion list. On July 12th, 2023, Mr. Scott filed his request for removal from the list and for recovery of funds confiscated from him at the Rivers Pittsburgh when he was found on that property's gaming floor in violation of his exclusion. OEC filed an answer objecting in part to Mr. Scott's request. However, OEC did not object to Mr. Scott's recovering a portion of the money confiscated from him at Rivers. A hearing in this matter was held on November 8th of 2023. OEC attended the hearing, presenting testimony and documentary evidence. Although receiving proper notice, Mr. Scott failed to appear. The evidence presented by OEC showed that Mr. Scott violated the board's exclusion order on at least 3 occasions. Specifically, on June 25, 2017, he visited the Hollywood Casino at the Meadows, stole a patron's chip, and was charged with trespassing. In January of 2021, he was again at the Meadows and placed sports wagers. He was identified as an excluded person and charged with defiant trespass. And then in June of 2023, he was found playing poker at the Rivers Casino, was evicted, and $430 was confiscated from him at that time. It is this $430 to which Mr. Scott seeks recovery. After hearing all of the evidence presented, the report and recommendation issued recommends that Mr. Scott remain on the exclusion list, but be permitted to recover $300 of the $430 confiscated from him, as that was his buy-in money and not winnings. And this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Sheldon Scott remain on the board's involuntary exclusion list, but that the $300 of confiscated money be returned to Mr. Scott.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next report and recommendation pertains to Brahim Wright. On August 24th, 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Wright on the involuntary exclusion list. A hearing in that matter was scheduled for December 7th, 2023. OEC appeared and offered evidence. Mr. Wright failed to appear. Evidence presented showed that on September 18th, 2021, Mr. Wright stole a $500 gaming chip from a patron at the Valley Forge Casino Resort while sitting at a blackjack table. Mr. Wright later returned to the casino and was served with an eviction notice, which he refused to sign. He was ultimately charged with theft and subsequently pled guilty to disorderly conduct. Following the hearing before the hearing officer, the report and recommendation issued recommends that Mr. Wright be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list, and this matter is ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Brahim Wright be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Next before the board is a report and recommendation for Rui Zheng. In January of 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Ms. Zhang on the board's involuntary exclusion list. A hearing in this matter was held on July 19th, 2023. OEC appeared presenting documentary, testimonial, and video evidence in support of its petition. Ms. Zhang appeared with counsel. Her counsel did not provide any testimony or documentary evidence. She relied solely on cross-examination of OEC's witnesses. The evidence and testimony showed that on December 27, 2021, management at the Luck Fu restaurant at the Live Philadelphia Casino notified surveillance regarding a disputed patron transaction in the amount of $124.44, which Ms. Zeng was involved in. Following an investigation by casino security and the Pennsylvania State Police, it was determined that in addition to that charge, between December 19, 2021 and December 27, 2021, Ms. Zeng redeemed rewards on several different patrons' reward cards at both the Luck Fu restaurant and the Live Philadelphia gift shop for a total of $693.44. Relative to the initial complaint, Ms. Zeng was charged with theft of services for the disputed transaction, and she ultimately made full restitution of $124.44, causing the charges to be dismissed. Counsel for Ms. Zeng suggested that Ms. Zeng regularly went to the casino with multiple friends who shared their rewards amongst each other, and testimony further indicated that there was only one patron complaint regarding the use of another's reward card, that being the $124 charge at the restaurant. Additional evidence presented by OEC to support its exclusion petition outlined a 2014 incident wherein Ms. Zeng cashed a voucher that ultimately belonged to an unidentified individual who had lost the voucher. Ultimately, after hearing all of the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Ms. Zeng be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list for the 2021 incident at the restaurant, and further finding that too much time had passed from the 2014 incident and basically making it stale. But notwithstanding that, it is recommended that you be placed on the exclusion list, and that recommendation is before the board.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Ru Zhang be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next report and recommendation before the board today stems from a request for removal from the voluntary self-exclusion list by an individual with the initials KA. A hearing in this matter was held on November 7th, 2023. OEC appeared presenting evidence. KA failed to appear, and the hearing was held in his absence. Evidence presented at the hearing showed that on August 9th, 2021, KA had properly filled out an exclusion form and signed the acknowledgement choosing the lifetime self-exclusion period, acknowledging that he reviewed all of the forms and understood the information provided to him, which included that he could not request removal from the self-exclusion list prior to 10 years from his placement on the list. No evidence having been presented from KA to support his petition, a report and recommendation was issued recommending KA's request be denied, and this recommendation is presently before the board.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that KA remain on the board's voluntary self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board is a report and recommendation pertaining to a request for recovery of funds confiscated from an individual while on the self-exclusion list. The OEC filed an answer objecting to this request. A hearing was held on January 16th, 2024. An individual with the initials MW appeared and testified on her own behalf. Counsel for OEC also appeared. However, there was not a full hearing required as the parties stipulated to the authenticity and admission of OEC's exhibits. The evidence presented at the hearing showed that on June 30th, 2018, MW placed herself on the self-exclusion list for a 5-year period, signing the acknowledgments, which include an acknowledgment that she was prohibited from collecting any winnings from gaming activity while on the list, as well as the requirement that she remove herself from the list even after the term had expired. On October 14th, 2023, having not removed herself from the list, MW was found at the Parks Casino gaming floor where she won a $3,000 jackpot. At the time she sought to collect the jackpot, she was identified as self-exclusion, and the jackpot was confiscated along with a $286.40 voucher. MW testified that she lives in New York, had placed herself on the 5-year exclusion list not only in Pennsylvania but in New York, and was automatically removed from the list in New York and thought the same would occur in Pennsylvania. She further stated that she did not carefully read through the terms and conditions of the exclusion documents. She has since taken the appropriate steps to remove herself from the list. Following the hearing, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that MW be permitted to recover the $286.40 voucher, but not the $3,000 winning jackpot, and this is the recommendation before the board.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. Of the $3,286.40 confiscated from MW, $286.40 shall be returned to her, and the remaining $3,000, which are winnings, shall be remitted to the board.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
GD's request to recover $5,000 in funds confiscated from him while on the self-exclusion list is the next report and recommendation. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to this request. A hearing was held on December 20th, 2023. At that hearing, OEC appeared and offered evidence. GD also appeared and testified on his own behalf. The evidence presented at the hearing showed that on November 3rd, 2022, GD, who was self-excluded, on November 3rd, 2022, GD electronically submitted requests to exclude himself from all forms of gaming in the Commonwealth, effectively for his lifetime. And 5 months later, on April 5th, 2023, after receiving promotional materials in the mail, GD nevertheless entered and gamed at the Wind Creek Casino for approximately 6 hours. Petitioner acknowledges entering the casino with approximately $4,000 in cash, and while there obtaining a cash advance for an additional $1,000. Petitioner further acknowledges that he lost during his period of play and decided at some point that he would stop gaming when his bankroll returned to $5,000. During his play, GD wagered no less than $2,200 in slot machines, over $20,000 in 52 hands of blackjack, $3,275 in 13 hands of poker, and approximately $10,000 over 24 rounds of roulette. Upon his attempting to exchange $5,000 in chips when he returned to that level of proceeds, he was identified as self-excluded, and the $5,000 was confiscated. After hearing all of the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that GD's petition be granted and the monies returned to him based in part on the confusion caused by GD receiving promotional materials while self-excluded, and also the hearing officer determining that the $5,000 in question was a buy-in and was not proceeds won. OEC filed exceptions to the report and recommendation stating that GD completed buy-ins in the amount of $4,700, lost most of that money, and actually wagered far more than the $5,000, and as a result, the $5,000 should be confiscated as winnings. And the recommendation is that the recommendation of the hearing officer is that the funds be returned. The Office of Enforcement Counsel and the Office of Chief Counsel recommend that the report and recommendation be denied and the funds be remitted.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board reject the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that GD's petition to recover funds confiscated while on the self-exclusion list be denied.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
The final report and recommendation before the board today is another request to recover funds confiscated while on the self-exclusion list. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to the request. A hearing in the matter was held on December 14th, 2023. OEC appeared, presented evidence. KC, the requester, failed to appear for the hearing. The uncontested evidence presented at the hearing showed that on March 13th, 2018, KC, who was self-excluded, properly filed the exclusion form and signed an acknowledgement selecting the 5-year period of self-exclusion, making her eligible to request removal on March 13th, 2023. However, she failed to request removal at that time. On June 27th, 2023, while still self-excluded, Casey entered and gamed at Parks, winning $2,475 in table games, and then a $1,303.52 jackpot at a slot machine, totaling $3,778.52 in winnings for that evening. When Casey was asked to provide identification to claim her $1,300 slot machine jackpot, she was identified as self-excluded, and that jackpot was retained by the casino, as well as an additional $120.88 in credits on the machine. Following the hearing, the report and recommendation was issued recommending that Casey's request be denied, that all of the monies confiscated were in fact winnings, and in fact were not even all of her winnings for the evening in question. And that's the recommendation before the board.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as directed by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that KC's petition to recover funds confiscated while on the self-exclusion list be denied.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We will now have the Bureau of Licensing matters presented by the Director of Bureau of Licensing, Sean Hannon. Sean?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's first licensing matter for your consideration is the renewal of the slot machine, table game, sports wagering, and VGT manufacturer licenses for Novomatic AG. Novomatic AG was formed in Austria in June of 1990. The company manufactures slot machines, table games, sports wagering, and video gaming terminal products and associated equipment for use or play at licensed facilities in the Commonwealth. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability reports. I have provided you with draft orders and ask that the board first consider the order to renew the slot machine manufacturer license for Novomatic AG.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next would be the order to renew the table game manufacturer license for Novomatic AG.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the table game manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Next is the order to renew the sports wagering manufacturer license.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the sports wagering manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And finally would be the order to renew their VGT manufacturer license.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal manufacturing license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next licensing matter for your consideration is the renewal of the slot machine and table game manufacturer designee licenses, as well as the sports wagering and VGT supplier licenses for Novomatic America Sales, LLC. Novomatic America Sales, LLC became incorporated in April of 2012 and is headquartered in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. The company is part of the Novomatic group of companies that sells, supports, and services various Novomatic AG gaming products. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with background investigation and suitability reports. I have provided you with draft orders and asked the board first consider the order to renew the slot machine manufacturer designee license for Novomatic America Sales LLC.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer designee's license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the order to renew the table game manufacturer designee license.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the table game manufacturer designee license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the order to renew the sports wagering supplier license.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the sports wagering supplier license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And finally, the order to renew the VGT supplier license.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal supplier license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next on the agenda is we have the consideration of an interactive gaming manufacturer license for Supreme Land Gaming Incorporated. Formed in Delaware in October of 2022, the company's principal place of business is in New York City. The company develops online games and was granted interim authorization on February 5th, 2024. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the interactive gaming manufacturer license for Supreme Lamb Gaming Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the interactive gaming manufacturing license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the approval of an interactive gaming manufacturer license for Galaxy Gaming-01 LLC. Galaxy Gaming is licensed in good standing as a table game manufacturer. Under the Gaming Act, the board may use an abbreviated process to consider the application of a currently licensed manufacturer. The Bureau of Licensing, Office of Enforcement Counsel, and Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement have reviewed the application for an interactive gaming manufacturer license for Galaxy Gaming-01 LLC, and I have provided you with the results of that review. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the interactive gaming manufacturer license for Galaxy Gaming-01 LLC.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the interactive gaming manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, we have consideration of the video gaming terminal manufacturer license renewal for NRT Technologies Incorporated. NRT Technologies is licensed in good standing as a slot machine manufacturer designee and a video game terminal manufacturer. Under the Gaming Act, the board may use an abbreviated process to consider the application of a currently licensed manufacturer. The Bureau of Licensing, Office of Enforcement Counsel, and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement have reviewed the abbreviated application for a video game terminal manufacturer license for NRT Technologies, and I have provided you with the results of that review. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to renew the video game terminal manufacturer license for NRT Technologies Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition is consideration of a sports wagering manufacturer license for Oak Ridge Interactive LLC. Formed in New Jersey in September of 2020, Oak Ridge Interactive's principal place of business is in Holmdel, New Jersey. The company develops a sports wagering platform which they intend to offer to licensed online sportsbook operators. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report for the approval and is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that you consider the order to approve Oak Ridge Interactive LLC for a sports wagering manufacturer license.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the sports wagering manufacturing license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, there are principal, key employee, and qualifier licenses. The Bureau of Licensing provides you with a proposed order for 11 principals, 22 key employees, and 1 qualifier. I ask the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the principal, key employee, and qualifier licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
There are also principal and key employee temporary credentials. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary credentials for 6 principals and 17 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these credentials.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Additionally, for your consideration are gaming employee permits and non-gaming employee registrations. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a list of 602 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits and 262 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask the board consider a motion approving the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter for consideration is withdrawal requests. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with 41 gaming and 28 non-gaming applicants. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these withdrawals.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the withdrawal of gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, we have an order to certify Continental Technologies Incorporated as a gaming service provider. I have provided you with a draft order and ask the board consider the order certifying this company.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the gaming service provider certification as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And finally, for your consideration are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 9 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask that the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the gaming service provider registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Nice job on Novamatics, by the way. Next is the Office of Enforcement Counsel, Cyrus Petrie. Cyrus.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 10 matters today for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 1 consent agreement, 3 revocations, 1 suspension, and 5 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 1 licensee Washington Trotting Association, LLC, doing business as Hollywood Casino at the Meadows. The matter will be presented by Assistant Enforcement Counsel Kelsey Scarrato. At this time, I will ask the representatives for Hollywood Casino to please state their names and for all non-attorney witnesses to stand and be sworn.
Alex Vizda, ALEX HVIZDA, Director of Compliance.
Matthew High School, MATTHEWHEISKELL, Vice President and General Manager at Hollywood Casino.
Stand to be sworn.
So help you God.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Kelsey Scarrato, SCIRROTTO, Assistant Enforcement Counsel with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. This consent agreement involves a self-exclusion incident. On February 27th, 2022, a 66-year-old individual with the initials DW visited the casino, then known as the Meadows Casino and Racetrack, for approximately 1 hour and 50 minutes before being identified as a self-excluded individual. During that time, she gamed at 48 slot machines and visited the cage 3 times. During her first visit to the cage, DW conducted a $300 e-check cashing transaction from cage cashier number 1 at the satellite cage. She returned to playing slots and then conducted a second transaction with the same cage cashier. During the second transaction, DW provided her identification and conducted a $300 e-check cashing transaction. The cage cashier failed to verify that DW was not on the self-exclusion list. DW then returned to playing slots before attempting to conduct a third e-check cashing transaction with a different cage cashier. During this third transaction, DW provided her identification and was identified as self-excluded. Security and police were notified, but DW left the casino without her identification before their arrival. Police contacted DW and she returned an hour later. DW was charged with summary defiant trespass as a result. A final written warning was issued to the cage cashier who conducted the first 2 transactions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel respectfully requests that the board approve the proposed consent agreement and stipulation of settlement, which requires that Hollywood Casino at the Meadows pay a civil penalty in the amount of $10,000 and an administrative fee of $2,500 for costs incurred by OEC, BIE, and other related staff in connection with this matter. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them at this time.
Meadows, would you like to address the board?
Just briefly, Madam Chair, members of the board, Alex Vizda, Director of Compliance. As you heard in OEC's presentation, we take this very seriously that we did a skip step all the way to a final written warning on this. But broader than that, our commitment to responsible gaming isn't just doing the training once a year or reminders during Compulsive Problem Gambling Month or Responsible Gaming Education Month, but we also quarterly randomly select employees and do a pop quiz to make sure they know what they're supposed to do. And specifically after this incident, this is one where the patron was a known regular patron and the cashier didn't do what they were supposed to do because he thought he knew who this person was. As she had self-excluded just a couple days before, which goes to prove the point about complacency is our biggest enemy. But we also issued a read and sign to everybody in the cage, reminding them that even if you do know this person and they are a regular, that doesn't mean they couldn't have signed up the day before or the week before. So you always have to check their self-exclusion status before conducting any type of transaction.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is my first time to come here for a consent agreement. I've been at the property a year and a half, so we're going to work to keep that a relative rarity in terms of a showing here for this. Obviously, it's a disappointment. I think, as Alex really stated it, it really underscores the need for diligence. I mean, this is a situation where you would have thought it would have been just fine based on your working with a customer over and over the course of time. And so we've had to reiterate that and make sure that everybody knows the policy. Obviously, we had to do what we had to do with the individual as well. But we take this very seriously, and we're reiterating the importance of this at all times.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioners Dermody and Hinkernell, any questions or comments?
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Excuse me, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston. Sorry, it's out of order. Commissioner Ralston approves that the board
Moves.
Moves to approve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Washington Trading Association, LLC, doing business as Hollywood Casino at the Meadows, as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion is adopted. Thank you, gentlemen.
The next three matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed complaints seeking the revocation of permits or registrations previously issued by the board. The complaint in each matter has been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in each complaint. The individual named in each complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each respondent. Therefore, the facts in each complaint are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Kelsey Scrotto, once again with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the non-gaming registration issued to Chanel Jones. Ms. Jones was employed as a cashier by First American Bank Card Incorporated, a licensed manufacturer. While working as a cash advance cashier at Rivers Casino Philadelphia, Ms. Jones stole $100 on 2 occasions for a total of $200. Police were notified, but no charges were filed. She was terminated from her position as a result and is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke the non-gaming employee registration issued to Chanel Jones.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the revocation of Chanel Jones' non-gaming employee registration for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Juan Sanchez, SANCHEZ, Assistant Enforcement Counsel with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Nazir Lango. Mr. Lango was previously employed as a security officer at Mount Airy Casino and Resort. The casino terminated Mr. Lango's employment for unauthorized possession of property because he stole an envelope containing $2,400 that a patron dropped on the casino gaming floor. After being confronted by his supervisor, Mr. Lango returned the $2,400, which was then given to the patron. Mr. Lango was not criminally charged, and he is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Nazir Lango.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the revocation of Nazir Lango's gaming employee occupation permit for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Again, Juan Sanchez. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Yan Ping Fang. Ms. Fang was previously employed as a table games dealer at Hollywood Casino York. Hollywood Casino York terminated Ms. Fang from her employment because in at least 9 instances she colluded with or allowed 2 patrons playing blackjack to cheat or otherwise allowed 2 patrons to receive $700 in winnings and avoid losses to the detriment of the casino. She is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry, and no criminal charges were filed against her. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Yan Ping Fang.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the revocation of Yan Ping Fang's gaming employee occupation permit for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next five matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders a proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of the inimical conduct may be placed on the board's public website. Once again, in each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Again, Juan Sanchez for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next two matters on the agenda are related and are requests to place Justin Draper and Felicia Taylor on the involuntary exclusion list. With the board's permission, I will read one set of facts and then request that each individual be placed on the exclusion list. Mr. Draper and Ms. Taylor played table games at Live Casino Philadelphia, included with a tables games dealer and 3 other patrons, or otherwise cheated, capped, and pinched wagers, and were paid out for losing wagers owed to Live Casino Philadelphia. Justin Draper received a total of $44,410, and Felicia Taylor received a total of $29,722.50 in ill-gotten gains. Pennsylvania State Police arrested and charged both with third-degree felonies, theft by deception, false impression, and conspiracy, as well as first-degree misdemeanors, unlawful taking by trick or deceit, and knowingly by trick, fraud, or manipulation, winning or reducing loss. Ms. Taylor's criminal case was dismissed after she paid $15,380 in restitution. Mr. Draper pleaded guilty to a third-degree felony, theft by deception, false impression. Live Casino Philadelphia permanently evicted both from the casino for their actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Justin Draper on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Justin Draper to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Felicia Taylor on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Felicia Taylor to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good morning, Thomas Monahan, M-O-N-A-G-H-A-N, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Mark Fornell on the board's interactive gaming and voluntary exclusion list. Mr. Forno opened an interactive gaming account on the PointsBet interactive sports wagering platform and made two deposits totaling $2,500. Mr. Forno's wagering activity resulted in losing the entirety of the money he deposited. Subsequently, Mr. Forno failed or refused to pay $1,500 that he owed to PointsBet as a result of his gaming activity. PointsBet closed Mr. Forno's interactive gaming account. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the Board place Mark Forno on the interactive gaming involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the Board approve the addition of Mark Fornell to the PGCB Interactive Gaming Involuntary Exclusion List for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
The next matter on the agenda for the Board's consideration is a request to place Lionel Franks on the Board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Franks stole $200 from a patron's jacket while the patron was gaming at a slot machine at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. He was criminally charged with robbery and later convicted. He was permanently evicted from Rivers, Philadelphia for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the Board place Lionel Franks on the Board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the Board approve the addition of Lionel Franks to the BGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the Board's consideration is a request to place James Hagan on the Board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Hagan physically assaulted a female and two male patrons at a bar at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. He was permanently evicted from Rivers, Philadelphia, and an arrest warrant was issued for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the Board place James Hagan on the Board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the Board approve the addition of James Hagan to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Final matter on the agenda consists of an enforcement action in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking the suspension of a gaming service provider registration previously issued by the Board and to place this gaming service provider on the Board's prohibited gaming service provider list. The complaint has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the respondent named in the complaint. The respondent named in the complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by Board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment. Therefore, the facts in the complaint are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the Board, and the matter is presently ripe for the Board's consideration. Senior Enforcement Counsel David Tepper will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate Board action.
Next on the agenda is a request to suspend the gaming service provider registration of Iris Media LLC and place Iris Media LLC on the prohibited gaming service provider list. Iris Media is a Belarusian company that provides affiliate marketing services for other entities. Iris Media LLC failed to comply with a special condition which required them to submit the fingerprints for each of their natural person qualifiers. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the Board suspend the gaming service provider registration of Iris Media LLC and place them on the prohibited gaming service provider list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the Board approve the suspension of Iris Media LLC's gaming service provider registration and place them on the prohibited gaming service provider list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you, Cyrus. The last item on the agenda today is public comment. Is there anyone in the room that would like to address the Board? Seeing no one, that concludes today's meeting. The next public meeting of the Board will be held on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024 at 10 a.m. at this location. And now may I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Commissioner Ralston.
Moves to adjournment.
Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Commissioners Dermody and Hankinell. Thank you, Mr. Augusto, for participating by telephonically. Everybody, take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.